To understand the threat to the Baltics, we need to look at the chilling parallels with the lead up to the invasion of Ukraine. So some of the indicators and warnings, these are very broad brush. Military build-up. There was a massive troop and equipment concentration near the border disguised as exercises. Hybrid warfare. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, disinformation campaigns and support for separatist movements grew enormously. Rhetoric and propaganda, escalating anti-Ukrainian rhetoric from the Kremlin, but also questioning Ukraine's sovereignty and historical legitimacy, but stirring up the Russian-speaking populations in the east. Economic pressure, use of energy supplies as a weapon, trade restrictions, economic destabilization efforts, intelligence activity, increased reconnaissance flights, increased attempts to penetrate Ukraine's command and control systems. And the key indicator, which is almost the boring one, was logistics and logistic preparations. Stockpiling of ammunition, fuel, establishment of field hospitals near the border. But the indicator that suggested that Russia was going to attack was the outloading and stockpiling of blood supplies, because you don't put those in a forward position unless you intend to use them. So what are we seeing in the Baltic states? Well, we're seeing increased Russian military presence in Kaliningrad and Belarus. We're seeing snap military drills and unusual troop movements. We've got hybrid warfare with GPS jamming, sabotage of undersea cables, and little green men fomenting arrest amongst the Russian-speaking minorities. Of course, the little green men, these are the same individuals that invaded, in inverted commas, Crimea back in 2014. They're effectively Russian GRU or Spetsnaz. The GRU is the Russian First Directorate, their military intelligence bureau, but they also have a large military capability, which has got an air force, it's got naval capability, it's got army capability, and their army are these Spetsnaz, they're special forces troops that they use to go in. And the little green men, they're in without any military badges or anything else. They tend to pop in and pop out and are seen in areas of the population in the Baltics. If they're proven to be military, then that is classed potentially as an invading force, but they never carry identity, and therefore they are deniable, which is what the Russians will say at the moment, in the same way they deny that they actually invaded Crimea. Economic pressure, manipulation of the energy markets, trade sanctions, attempts to disrupt the Baltic economies. Again, a lot of this is coming out in propaganda and rhetoric. Intelligence activity. There's been heightened Russian intelligence across the Baltics, including gathering, cyber espionage and human intelligence operations, spying into trying to understand the Baltics government's intents. And logistical preparations. Well, we're seeing preparations in Kaliningrad and in Western Russia, but not to the same degree that we saw immediately before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So that's an area that people will be watching very closely. The others are worrying. The logistics is the key. So we've done the similarities between the Baltic states and what's going on in Ukraine. But have we seen any similarities before? In August 2008, a brief but intense war erupted between Russia and Georgia, centred on the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Tensions that had been simmering for years escalated dramatically, leading to a full-scale Russian invasion. The conflict was preceded by a series of escalating clashes between Georgian forces, South Ossetian separatists, who were backed by Russia, and on the night of the 7th and 8th of August, Georgia launched a massive military offensive to retake control of Shkhinvali, the capital of South Ossetia. Russia responded swiftly with an overwhelming force, launching a large-scale land, air and sea invasion of Georgia. Russian forces not only pushed Georgian troops out of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, but also advanced deeper into undisputed Georgian territory, occupying key cities and infrastructure. A ceasefire agreement was brokered by the European Union on August the 12th, but the conflict had significant, lasting consequences. Russia officially recognized the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, a move condemned by much of the international community. The war resulted in hundreds of casualties and the displacement of tens of thousands of civilians. The conflict also highlighted the geopolitical tensions in the Caucasus region. and Russia's willingness to use military force to assert its influence in its near abroad. Again, let's look at a comparison of the indicators and warnings. In Georgia in 2008, again, we had a military build-up, large-scale military exercises. Kavkaz 2008 near the Georgian border, which was then used as a springboard for the invasion. Military exercises were used as a springboard for the invasion of Ukraine. We're seeing military exercises on the borders of the Baltic states. In hybrid warfare, there were cyber attacks on Georgian government websites and media outlets in the weeks leading up to the invasion, and there were disinformation campaigns, just as we saw in Ukraine, just as we're seeing in the Baltics. Rhetoric and propaganda, escalating rhetoric accusing Georgia of aggression against South Ossetia. The same sort of accusations that we saw against the Ukrainians in the east, accusing the Ukrainians of oppressing the Russian-speaking people, in particular in the east of Ukraine. Passportization, issuing of Russian passports to residents in South Ossetia and Abkhazia, creating a pretext for intervention to protect Russian citizens. Well, we've seen the compulsory issuing of Russian passports in the disputed Donbass region, and Russia trying to bring elements of the Donbass into the Russian constitution to say that's part of Russia, so that they can justify their actions in protecting the Russian population in Ukraine. Economic pressures. In Georgia, trade embargoes and other forms of economic coercion were used against Georgia in the run-up to Russia's invasion. And intelligence activity, of course, the spooks are always at it. Increased Russian intelligence gathering, reconnaissance, including flights from intelligence aircraft over Georgia, part of sending a message that we're not just watching you, but we're coming.